this is a really short revision guide in response to a question I received yesterday about writing the introduction and the importance of the introduction. And this is for Unit 4, Section B. The introduction is actually really important in your essays because it's going to establish for your examiner the whole of your interpretation, and so give that context for your specific examples. So it's really important, and actually the introduction, getting that interpretation down into that introduction, will help you from waffling later on in the essay, because you won't need to justify your interpretation so much. So we've got our essay structure for those Section B questions, which is introduction, 3 or 4 fear paragraphs, and then a basic conclusion. And this is where, I want to give you that warning, is that this revision is about structure. It's not about content. I can do some more revision videos on content, but ultimately the content is stuff that we've explored and explored and explored, and it's down to you to populate your script with your notes, and to have your own interpretation of the script. And within that, you can't prep a huge amount for the exam, because you've got to respond to the questions in the exam. There is no hard or fast rule as to how to answer the question, because you need to know what the question is in the first place, if you see what I mean. So just be careful of that. The exam board are hot on pre-prepared answers, and they are not as good an answer as one that is formulated in the exam, because pre-prepared answers do not match the question. You can go in with knowing what structure to write, and especially the structure of fear and how to get the key words into it, but they will not answer the question because you don't know what the question is. Okay, warning over. Some key points about how to do your introduction. It needs to be concise and to the point. Some marks are carried in the introduction, but really the majority of the marks are going to be in your paragraph. So you want to spend maybe 200 words or even less on this introduction. So you need to be concise and to the point. You need to reference the key scenes and the moments of action that are vital in your interpretation. You need to reference the social, historical, political and cultural influences of the play, and today, how the audience today are going to understand it. And finally, you've got to refer to the question. You've got to repeat that question in your introduction. That serves two purposes. Firstly, and most importantly, that's for you. That's to make sure that you've got in mind the demands of the question. If you rewrite the question into your introduction, it will help focus your mind and your work towards answering the question. Secondly, for the reader, for the examiner, it demonstrates that you have understood your interpretation, that your interpretation is thorough and connects to the whole of the play, not just in particular bits or the bits that you're going to talk about, and that you've understood the demands of the question. And they will know that hopefully the rest of your question will then focus on, the rest of your answer will then focus on the question. So, it's quite simple structuring that introduction. You need to start with an overview of your interpretation, and that needs to be nice and concise, and straight to the point. You need to justify that interpretation in terms of content. When I mean in terms of content, your interpretation needs to tie up. It's got to be valid, it's got to be purposeful, it's got to be appropriate, and it's got to be able to carry throughout the whole play. Remember that the examiners are really experts in the play that you are studying. They will have read countless essays about Lysistrata or Lysistrata, So they will know all about it. So they will know immediately if there's going to be holes in your interpretation or not. So you need to make sure that it is quite clear and coherent. And secondly, it needs to be justified interpretation in terms of the context. So it needs to reference the original conditions of the play in the first place. So it needs to reference, in particular to Royschek, it needs to reference the first performances in 1913, the atmosphere in which they were performed, and the ideas, for instance, of how Royschek is about the individual, and the put upon man, the everyman, and how he represents how everyone might have been downtrodden and forced to do things by those in power. Don't forget, as well as that, you've got the style, the expressionist and modernist styles. And it needs to then also refer to how your modern audience is going to interpret that, and what we can learn from that as a modern audience. Then finally, it needs to link to the question and the key scenes. Now, if, for instance, in the 2013 exam, we were very lucky in that the context of the question was justifying your interpretation to the context, so you don't need to necessarily labour that point too much. But either way, you need to link that then to the question and to key scenes that you're going to talk about in your essay. So the next key, really key tip there is, before you write the essay, plan it first, so that you've got an idea about what you're going to write. At the same time, planning also helps you understand how much time you've got. You've got 56 minutes to write this essay, if you don't have any special considerations. So that really isn't actually very long. And after 20 minutes, you've got half an hour left. You've really got to make sure that you get straight into the essay, straight into the point, and work really, really well. So, going back to that essay structure, so you've got your introduction, then you've got your 3 to 4 paragraphs. That focus of the fear always needs to make sure that it links back to the question, back to your introduction. So those are the key scenes that you're talking about. Those are the key moments. And finally, to answer the second question someone asked about conclusion, it's really, really basic. In fact, most of you won't get to write your conclusion because you'll have run out of time. And it really doesn't matter, because the marks are found in justifying your interpretation and showing how you're going to perform it in the acting and action. And then the higher bands are accessed through tying those up, through the justification elements, and linking it to the context of the time of the play and of our modern audience. Really, if you get to it, just tie up your essay with a one-sentence piece that just describes what your interpretation is, and then leave it at that. Or if you feel you've forgotten anything and you want to write it, prop it in there. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Okay, I hope that helps. Thank you.